So welcome everybody, my name is Paul. I'm a country realtor in the state of Virginia and I live over near Lexington in the western part of the state. And I'm very enthusiastic about homesteading and country living, even though I've traveled a lot. And I want to talk today about specifically people who are thinking about moving to Virginia to do homesteading. I have had some contact recently with some people who are moving here from another state, and they heard a little bit about it and they saw one of my videos and they asked a little bit about it. And I'm partly making this video for them and other people like them. So I want to tell you a little bit about the state of Virginia generally, in case you don't know. I suggest people get a nice map like this one here. This is a topographic map of the whole state of Virginia, and it has all these different segments in here, as you can see, little sections of maps. And it goes into some great detail. You can see the topography, the elevation, the rivers, the streams, and so on, and all the major highways and towns. And a lot of people don't know a lot about Virginia, so let me explain a little bit here. As you know, Virginia has a coastline, and you get over places like Virginia Beach and Norfolk and a lot of places like that. It's very, very different over there from where I live in the western part. I'm living over here in this area, where all the mountains are, the Blue Ridge Parkway. Now, between the coastline of Virginia, which is, let's say, you can go, it's a few hours from where I live. If I wanted to drive all the way to the beach for now, where I am, it would take me, 4 or 5 hours, honestly, to get, because you get into some really heavy traffic over in this area and so on. And it would depend on kind of where I wanted to go, because the way that the highways go are not direct. Some of the highways that would go over to the beach from where I'm at come up around here and then go down there, so it's a lot longer. Now, if you really want to be close to the beach area in Virginia, then you'll need to live on the eastern side over in this area. Now, I personally don't really like that area much, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. Generally, the capital of Virginia and Richmond, it's very, very crowded over there. It starts to get very big highways, a lot of traffic. And then you get close to the beach, you got I-95, you have just everybody wants to be there. And it's just expensive and time consuming to get around and so on. So I tend to avoid that area, and I practice real estate over in this part of the area of the state. Now, Route 81, which is a north-south highway, goes down this way, all the way down to the border of North Carolina. And the whole ride here is actually very, very beautiful. The Blue Ridge Mountains and the Blue Ridge Parkway come up along roughly parallel to Route 81. And there's a lot of hills up there. We're talking about maybe the highest around where I live is maybe 4,300 or 400 feet. And then there's a lot of them in the 2,000 or 3,000 range. And where I personally live is about 1,250 feet above sea level. Now, when you go west from the beachy area, we have a part of Virginia that's called the Piedmont, which is basically, it's terrain that is rolling and gentle, a lot of farmland, a lot of tobacco, and in the old days cotton, now we have soybeans and so on, and timber, a lot of pine is harvested over here and grown like a crop. And it's a gentle, beautiful area, but at the same time, it does not have the great hills that you might look out of your home and you see sort of rolling area, but you won't see nice hills and those kind of terrain in the Piedmont. For that, you need to go a little further toward the west. Now, a lot of people ask questions about what if I move to Virginia, it's a big state, where would I like to be if I'm going to homestead? And my suggestion is to get closer to the higher areas in the Shenandoah Valley, which is, I said, all the way down. The Shenandoah Valley is generally referred to as this long valley here, and if you can refer to the map behind me, this is the upper part of the Shenandoah Valley, but the actual Shenandoah River is kind of rolling down this way, and there's a lot of history of the United States in this area. There's some old battlefields and so on, and just some very significant events in the history of this country took place right here in Virginia. And there's a really good reason why people settled here, because the terrain, like I said, if you have all the hills, you have a lot more variety of views rather than just kind of rolling or flat land. So it's very easy to find a place where you might go around a corner and then you have a very unique view, and you can buy a piece of property that has a view, a very good view many times, because there's a lot of elevated areas that aren't too steep to build on, and you can get yourself a homestead with a great view over the hills and the valleys below. And I really urge people, if they have a chance, to come and visit Virginia, especially the western part of the state where I live. Now, if you look at this map here, down here by North Carolina, as you know, the western part of North Carolina is also very hilly, and sometimes the mountains are even higher than the ones in Virginia in some areas. So the western part of North Carolina is also very, very similar, but also more intensely steep and so on. So if you want a really nice homestead, my suggestion is to find an area that has a combination of land. You don't want it to be too steep. Unless you're just a really woodsman person, you probably don't want to bring your family way up some gravel road and some little steep little outcropping somewhere and park yourself there. You want to have some access to the roads where you can get in and out easily, and maybe some area where there's some sunny area where you can have the right kind of sun exposure to have a garden and so on. And it's a lot easier to build on more gently sloped land than it is to try to build on something that's a 45 or 60 degree angle, although people do it out here. So what I'm suggesting is to look into some of the major towns in Virginia, because what's really nice about this state here is that a lot of the towns like Lexington, Waynesboro, Stanton, Lynchburg, they all have all the things that you need. You know, the Roanoke has the big malls and everything, but they're not too big with giant buildings like New York or Chicago or Detroit or. Okay, so it's very, very nice to be near enough to a decent sized city that you can access them easy. There's jobs more there, and there's hospitals and schools and so on, but you don't have to live in a tiny little space with all kinds of zoning rules and people breathing down your neck in some little suburb where you can't have any chickens or anything like that. If you go into the western part of the state, Virginia has the most private farms of any state in the country. And a lot of the reasons they're actually, I'm astounded as I drive around here, not anymore, I've been here 7 years, but it's just amazing how much land is in active production. It's not just there, you know, like in some areas, well, there used to be some farms there, now it's a golf course or whatever, or nobody's really farming, but I see loads and loads of very, very active farmers. They have chickens and goats and something going on there, and they might be producing cattle, Angus cattle, they might be harvesting some trees and maybe a small timber mill or something like that. So Virginia has all the right elements for anyone who's seeking to do some homesteading, and I'm very much a fan of it. And we are very, very blessed in this state, you might say, because we have all the beautiful things. We have the hills, we have the streams, we have farms, we have timber, we have good water supply. Speaking of which, in parts of Virginia, west of Lexington, down around this area, this is Roanoke, or this is Lynchburg, Roanoke. But in this area, there's a Bath County near Lexington. It has hot springs, a little town called Hot Springs, and a resort there, and it has some really interesting warm springs and healing resorts that once upon a time existed in that state. That's why it's called Bath County. People used to go up there and retreat from the big cities and get healed. So even after the Civil War, there was a lot of wounded people, and so it kind of developed partly with that in mind. So Virginia has a lot of features that a lot of people don't realize. That there's some of the biggest caverns, underground caverns, Luray Cavern, Natural Bridge area, up further north near Front Royal, all along the Blue Ridge Mountains. There are areas where there are giant caverns. Frankly, I haven't even been in them. I've seen pictures of them, but I'm astounded. There's literally just giant, huge caverns under the hillsides in some parts of Virginia and even into West Virginia. So it has a lot of interesting features. Now, the rivers, there's a lot of good rivers in Virginia. Some of them are very short, like the Maury River that runs through Lexington and that comes out of West Virginia and runs down and it joins the James River. Now, where I live in Buchanan, the James River goes through, and the James River is a very, very historic and very large river. As it goes down to the sea, it comes down all through the Piedmont and the hills of the western part of the state, and then weaves its way around and ends up in the ocean. And there's all kinds of fish there, and people go tubing and rafting all the time on that river, and canoeing. So it's very much a high recreation area. We have the Jefferson National Forest in Virginia. We have the Washington National Forest. Historic peaks like the Twin Peaks of Otter, where even Jefferson, we climbed up and they used it for surveying and looking around, and you can go walk up there. The Blue Ridge Parkway, as I said, it runs the whole length of the state, north to south roughly, Virginia. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful drive, and it just brings some tourists in there. Virginia has a lot of really good industry in farming, cattle, various kinds of plant crops, and also they have trees. They do a lot of timber harvesting, and they grow pine trees, the yellow pine and the white pine. They use them for timber and lumber, and there's a lot of that going on. And you can buy a piece of property that has a stand of beautiful timber on it, and you can harvest part of it and use it for your own use, or you can get involved in what they have, a timber agent, where someone will come in there and they will make a negotiation with someone who has the equipment to go in there and harvest trees. And you can make some money off your land that way, at the same time clear the land partially so that you can use it and build a house there or something. So there's a lot of really beautiful areas of Virginia that are really kind of hard to get into in just a short video, but down in Virginia, at this area here, is Smith Mountain Lake. It's a man-made lake, about 50 years old, and they put in some stripers in there and a lot of fish, and it's a dam, and there's hundreds of miles of coastline, inlets, and because it's so convoluted, there's so many different little places and inlets that you can build a house, and it's quite expensive now because there's quite a demand. But that whole region, you don't have to actually buy a property right on the lake, because all around Smith Mountain Lake and Lake Anna up in this area, all around the lakes, there's other kinds of land that you can be within 5 or 6, 10 minutes of the state park on the lake, but you don't have to buy the waterfront property that's very expensive. You see, so you can get permitted access to a marina. You can go in there and launch a boat or something, and it's very well supported if that's what you're into, fishing and cruising around the lake and water skiing and that sort of thing. So as far as hunting, Virginia has long been a traditional state where hunting, Second Amendment rights, there's a lot of really active hunters even now. I'm in my late 60s, and I'm personally not a hunter, but I find myself enjoying target practice and just enjoying the finesse, the skill of learning how to shoot a firearm and take care of it safely. And I learned much younger. When I was 16 years old, I had a shotgun and a .22 in my bedroom, and nobody thought anything about it. So it's a very different kind of life when you live away from the city. So I find my neighbors that have been here, they're very polite, they introduce themselves right away, they're helpful, not annoying, they mind your own business. But boy, you know, a friend of mine down the road here, if I leave my car lights on or something and I have to have someone come and help me jump my car, he says, I'll be right down, you know, and it's really, really nice. And the guy across the road from me has a sawmill, and sometimes people come up there and bring up logs, and he cuts them up in boards for them and so on. So you see a lot of people living in a self-reliant homesteading life have tools and equipment, machines and skills. And my friend who does furniture, the one who helped me jump my car, he's got like this huge wood shop where he's got like, he used to make cabinets and furniture, and it's a big, huge professional shop. And he makes these handmade, beautiful canoes. And so there's a lot of that kind of talent, that quiet industry going on in the state of Virginia. And that's another really good reason to come here and start a homestead. I encourage people to contact me. I work for Reliance Team Realty in the state of Virginia. You can look that up online. I try to put the link here, my business card or something, and contact me through this site here and my email address. But I try to help people, and people who are moving in from another state, it's hard to come and look at a property. So ask me, because I can go around my video camera. I'm where I live within 100 miles or so, where I drive around different reasons for business. And I can go take a look at a piece of property for you, maybe do a little video of it and show it to you, and then you can say, okay, well, thank you for checking that out. I like to help people. It's very, very fulfilling to help people find a real homestead, a place to call their home and bring up a family or retire into, because we all need a home. It's so basic, but the lifestyle of living, retiring in some big city where there's just a lot of noise and congestion and expenses, it's not a very good way to do it. So I really encourage, come out to the countryside. You can sell a home in New Jersey or something, and you can have a lot of spare money after you buy a home of equal size down here in a much cheaper area with much lower taxes, I might add, much lower taxes. You'll find that you'll have money to spare and you can upgrade a house. There's all kinds of people out here with skills. You can have someone come and upgrade a house and install some new things if it's not exactly the way you want. Or build a house of your dreams, you see? So the real estate market here in Virginia is very, very active, especially in some of these nicer towns like Waynesboro. I made a video about that. There's some very, very charming towns in Virginia that are just the right size. They're not too big, not too small, and you can go 10, 15 minutes out of town and you'll be in like a rural farm area and nobody will bother you out there. And you can have your solar things, and you can have your water collection system. You can do all that there. Maybe even have some animals. But be prepared to, when you see something that you really like, if you're looking for a property in Virginia, or anywhere for that matter, if you see something that you really, really like, and maybe it's just it's got a couple little things that kind of you can maybe fix, but it's a pain, maybe a roof or something, but if it has all the right elements for something that could make your dream place, don't hesitate to make a strong offer, because you ask yourself, well, where am I going to see another one? Where am I going to see another homestead with a barn and pond and everything? See? So think about being a really confident buyer when you go out and look for property, because frankly, we have a shortage of inventory out here. We need people to come here and buy some of the land and upgrade it. And there's a lot of older homes that people have left, and it's in a family somewhere, and maybe they don't maintain it very well, but someone can come in and buy it, and it'll be a win-win situation, because a family will unload a house, and then you can restore a house or something. And then that's a way of getting into it without building a brand new house. But if you have the means and the intention, the will, and some of the skills, then by all means, come to Virginia and find a place to build a home. And if you can find something that has an access in, Virginia has now been improving its access to the internet. They've been trying to install fiber optics all the way through a lot of these country roads. And honestly, there's a lot of country roads in Virginia. Some of them gravel roads that go on for miles and miles. So some of those will be later access, but a lot of people don't want to live down that far down the country gravel road. But we have all the technology here. There's a strong economy here. It's active. I personally really enjoy it, especially if you get away from the big cities. If you want to avoid some place in Virginia, I would avoid being around Washington, D.C. Frankly, at least an hour away from Washington, D.C., and preferably even an hour and a half, because I've been in and out of D.C., and it's not something you want to do very often, honestly, because the traffic and the construction and the tolls and this and that, it's just a nightmare up there. So I suggest, if you're looking at Virginia, look a good ways away from the bigger cities, because you'll find a lot of these beautiful smaller cities that have all the elements that you really need. And then there's some job opportunities a lot of times in those smaller cities as well. And one final note here, and if you want to choose where to live, I personally think it's a good strategy to triangulate. Let's say, for example, you have like Charlottesville, one area, and then you have like Waynesboro, another area, and then you can find another town like Lynchburg or something, and you go, okay, between in that area there, there's 3 different cities I could go to for work or whatever, and if I position myself in the right location, then I'll have all those options. I won't have to depend on just one city and one road in there and all that. You can, like sometimes there's a dual couple career people, and they both need a job, and maybe they need different kinds of environment and different kinds of jobs. But if you position yourself near some of these smaller but decent size and good, well financed and well constructed cities like Lynchburg and so on, there's a lot going on there economically, and there's a lot of job opportunities. So like I said, position yourself wherever you decide to live. If you really, really want to be way far away from everything, well, you can do that here in Virginia too. There's land way out there if you really want that kind of land. I suggest you get a kind of piece of property that has the elements where you can homestead: the soil, sunshine, water, a way in, decent access, and views, and so on. And if you bring your own value to the property that you buy, then it's just going to really help you out economically, because it's sweat equity. Because you can see, there's a saying: you see a piece of glass, a jeweler sees a diamond, and someone just kicks it, they think it's a piece of glass. So if you see the right property, and you say, where am I going to see another one? I can do something with this. I can bring my own value here. You might be able to create a homestead that lasts for generations, and you and your family will enjoy it, and then maybe even pass it down to someone else. So thanks again for listening. Please like and share. I'd love to hear from people, and even just a few people I know. I don't have like this huge, I'm not as popular as some of the cat videos on YouTube, but I try to give information and inspiration about homesteading and a very relaxing way of living, especially in this state. So thanks again for listening, and hope to see you in some of my other videos.